It started with a suitcase, a black leather one, neatly packed, sitting by the front door like a silent promise Emma had grown used to. These work trips, Daniel would leave every other week, always the same excuse, the same cologne lingering on his shirts when he returned. But this time, something in her gut twisted differently. The night before he left, he couldn't look her in the eyes. At breakfast, his phone buzzed. He smiled, the kind of smile she hadn't seen in months, and turned the screen away. When he finally kissed her goodbye, it was mechanical routine. Hours later, she watched from the window as his car disappeared down the street. But then came the sound that broke the quiet, a laugh. Soft, feminine, unmistakable. Emma froze. It came from the house next door, Mrs. Walker's place. A widow in her early 30s, always polite, always too interested in small talk. Emma brushed it off. Surely it was a coincidence. But as night fell, she noticed the faint glow of headlights. Daniel's car, parked right beside the Walker house. Her breath hitched. She watched, disbelieving, as her husband stepped out. No luggage, no tie, no rush to the airport. He knocked once. The door opened, and the laugh came again. This time, it was followed by silence, a silence that screamed louder than any truth Emma could deny. The suitcase by the door hadn't been for travel, it was for lies. Emma barely slept that night. Every creak in the floor, every hum of the refrigerator felt like a betrayal. She replayed the scene in her mind: Daniel's car, the laugh, the door closing. Maybe she was wrong, she told herself. Maybe there was some explanation she hadn't thought of. But deep down, she knew. The next morning, she made coffee and stared at the house next door. The curtains were drawn, the porch empty, the same as always. Too normal, too careful. She waited until Daniel texted her, landed safely. Long meetings today. Her stomach turned. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Something inside her snapped, not rage, not sadness, but a cold, sharp calm. She needed to know the truth. That afternoon, she baked a pie cherry. Mrs. Walker's favorite hand walked to her neighbor's door. The woman opened it with a surprised smile. Emma, what a nice surprise. Her hair was slightly damp, her shirt unbuttoned, one too many buttons. Emma's pulse quickened. Thought I'd bring something over, she said, forcing a smile. As they talked, Emma's eyes wandered over the couch, the counter, the faint scent of Daniel's cologne. Then she saw it, a tie, his tie, draped casually over a chair like it belonged there. Oh, your husband's, Mrs. Walker asked, noticing her stare. Daniel's, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman froze for a fraction of a second before laughing awkwardly. Oh, he must have dropped it when he came to help with the fence last week. But Emma remembered that week Daniel had claimed to be in Chicago. She smiled anyway. He's always so helpful. As she left, her hands trembled so hard she almost dropped the pie dish. When she got home, she opened Daniel's drawer. Inside were two flight tickets. One was for him. The other was for her asterisk. Not Emma, Clara Walker. It read. The next work trip wasn't a lie anymore. It was an escape plan. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, the tickets trembling in her hand. Her chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped her heart out and left only the echo of a heartbeat. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, but nothing came. Just silence. The kind that hurts worse than any sound. She folded the tickets neatly and placed them back in the drawer. Let him think she didn't know. Let him believe his secret was safe. That night, she cooked his favorite meal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the expensive red wine he loved. When Daniel came home, he kissed her cheek like always. You okay? He asked, noticing the faint smile she wore. Perfect, she said. He didn't notice her eyes. Over dinner, he talked about his upcoming meetings, his stress, and how Clara's husband had been traveling a lot. Emma nodded, every word burning into her memory. Later that night, when he showered, she sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Password, their wedding date, predictable. His inbox was filled with coded messages, hotel bookings, secret calls, little lies disguised as business. She didn't cry. Instead, she started planning. The next morning, she visited her lawyer. Hypothetically, she began. What happens if a husband hides money in another account? The lawyer's raised brow told her he understood everything without a single detail. You'd be surprised how often that happens, he said. Over the next few days, Emma gathered everything: documents, passwords, photos. She was invisible, smiling as if nothing had changed, baking pies, watering plants, pretending to be the perfect wife. Daniel didn't notice her quiet determination. He was too busy whispering to Clara behind closed doors. On Friday, she found the final piece, a lease agreement in both their names. He wasn't just leaving, he was starting a new life with her. Emma looked at the signature and whispered, "Not anymore." That night, she booked 2 tickets under Daniel's name, one to their supposed destination, and another to somewhere he'd never expect, her lawyer's office. She wasn't going to beg or confront him. She was going to make sure that when he left, he'd lose everything he tried to take. The following week, Emma perfected the art of pretending. Every morning, she kissed Daniel goodbye and waved from the doorway like a loving wife, then watched his car disappear down the street. The second he turned the corner, her expression hardened. She opened her notebook, filled with dates, names, and bank transfers. It was no longer a marriage, it was an operation. Her lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, helped her quietly freeze accounts that Daniel didn't know were joint. Timing is everything, he reminded her. You need proof before you move. Proof. That was exactly what she was collecting. One evening, she followed Daniel. She parked a few blocks away from the fancy downtown restaurant where he was supposed to be meeting clients. Inside, through the large glass windows, she saw him laughing with Clara. They looked comfortable to comfortable. When Clara reached across the table and touched his hand, Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her phone and snapped a photo. It wasn't jealousy that fueled her. It was justice. Later that night, she printed every message, every email, every photo. She placed them neatly in a file labeled Freedom. It was strange how calm she felt, like she'd finally stopped drowning. Daniel came home late, smelling faintly of perfume. Long day, he said, loosening his tie. You have no idea, she replied, smiling as she handed him a glass of wine. Over the next few days, Emma began moving her things quietly, her jewelry, her savings, her mother's old letters. She even found a small apartment downtown under a different name, a place no one knew about, a place where she could breathe. But before she could leave, she wanted him to see what she'd become. One morning, she placed an envelope on the kitchen counter before he woke. Inside were the photos, the bank statements, and a single note. You took my trust. I took back my freedom. She didn't wait to see his reaction. She just walked out, suitcase in hand, into the quiet sunrise. The air felt different, clean, sharp, alive. She knew he'd chase her, maybe even big. But for the first time, she didn't care. She had built something on her own, peace. And for Emma, that was worth more than revenge. Daniel woke up to silence. At first, he thought Emma was just in the garden like she always was on Saturdays. But when he called her name, there was no answer. The house felt different, emptier, colder. Then he saw the envelope on the counter, his name written in her careful, looping handwriting. He opened it slowly, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. The photos hit him like a storm. His own face staring back at him, caught in lies he thought he had buried deep. Clara's smile, the text messages, the note. You took my trust. I took back my freedom. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the words. He had been so sure Emma would never leave. She had been quiet, soft-spoken, dependable. The kind of woman who forgave too easily. But this was something else. He sat down at the kitchen table, the weight of his choices settling in. He realized that he hadn't just lost his wife. He had underestimated her. Across town, Emma sat in her new apartment, surrounded by boxes and sunlight. It was small, but it was hers. No reminders of the past. No framed lies on the walls. Just peace. For the first time in years, she made coffee without waiting for anyone else to join her. She sat by the window and watched the city come alive. Her phone buzzed Daniel. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned off the ringer and took a slow sip of her drink. She wasn't running anymore. She was rebuilding. The next few weeks passed quietly. She found a new job at a local art center, teaching workshops to women who had once felt invisible like she did. She listened to their stories and, for the first time, realized she wasn't alone. One evening, while closing the studio, she noticed a small note left on her desk. "Thank you for helping me remember my worth," it said. Emma smiled. She had set out to escape, but she was becoming something more, a woman who turned her pain into strength. Daniel, meanwhile, sat in their old home, staring at the empty chair across from him. The silence he once craved now felt unbearable. He finally understood. She had been his anchor, not his cage. But it was too late. Emma had already learned to live without him. Emma's days began to fill with color again. The art center buzzed with laughter and quiet tears. With stories whispered between brushstrokes, every class felt like therapy, each canvas a confession. She no longer saw herself as broken. She was a mosaic made of every cracked piece that somehow fit together again. One afternoon, while cleaning up after a workshop, a woman about her age lingered by the door. "You're Emma, right?" she asked softly. Emma nodded, cautious but kind. The woman smiled nervously. "I'm Clara." For a second, Emma froze. The air thickened. The name, that face it was her. The woman from the photos. Daniel's secret. Emma's past nightmare standing in front of her in daylight. Clara's voice trembled. "I didn't know. About you. I mean, he said you two were over long before." Before we met, Emma felt 100 emotions flash through her. Anger, pain, disbelief, but also pity. Clara looked nothing like the villain she had imagined. She looked ... lost. "He lied to both of us," Emma said quietly. "But that's what he does." Clara nodded, tears welling. "I ended it when I found out. He tried to make me stay, but I couldn't. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." Emma took a deep breath. The old her would have turned away. But this Emma had learned forgiveness wasn't about others. It was about freeing herself. "You don't owe me an apology," she said softly. "We both just wanted love. We just trusted the wrong man." Clara smiled weakly. "You're stronger than I am." Emma shook her head. "No, we're just learning at different speeds." When Clara left, Emma stood alone in the studio, the late sunlight painting golden streaks across the walls. She felt lighter, freer than ever. That night, she opened her journal and wrote, "Today, I met the woman who broke my marriage and healed a part of me I didn't know was still bleeding." Meanwhile, Daniel sat alone in a bar, nursing a drink and scrolling through old photos on his phone. He saw Emma's smile in every reflection, every shadow. For the first time, he realized what she meant when she said she took back her freedom. She hadn't left to hurt him. She had left to find herself, and in doing so, she found peace he never could. Weeks passed, and Emma's art center began to gain attention beyond her small town. Local journalists came to interview her about the healing palette, the name she'd given the program. They expected to find an ambitious artist chasing success, but instead, they found a woman who simply wanted to help others reclaim their light. One evening, after the last student left, Emma walked through the quiet hall. Paintings lined the walls, each telling a story of survival. There was a portrait of a mother who had lost her son, an abstract swirl painted by a young man recovering from addiction, a landscape drawn by a woman leaving an abusive marriage. Emma stopped in front of that one. The brushstrokes were hesitant but determined, much like her own when she first began again. She smiled faintly. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "I heard about what you're doing. It's incredible. Can we talk?" It was Daniel. Her chest tightened. For a moment, she almost ignored it, but something in her whispered to listen. Not out of love, but closure. They met at a small cafe by the river. Daniel looked older, defeated. His once confident voice now cracked when he spoke. Emma, I'm sorry. For everything, she sipped her coffee, calm, measured. You're not saying that for me, are you? He looked down. Maybe not. Maybe for me. I ruined the best thing I ever had. Emma studied him for a long moment, then said, You didn't ruin me, Daniel. You freed me. I just didn't see it back then. He blinked, confused. Freed you? She nodded. If you hadn't broken me, I'd never have rebuilt myself stronger. Daniel laughed bitterly. You always were tougher than me. No, Emma said gently. I just learned. That peace doesn't come from being loved, it comes from loving yourself. They sat in silence, the hum of the cafe around them. Finally, Daniel whispered, Do you think you could ever forgive me? Emma smiled sadly. I already did. The moment I stopped needing your apology. She stood to leave, her heart strangely calm. As she walked away, Daniel watched her go, realizing she was no longer his story to tell. Back at the art center, Emma painted late into the night. The canvas glowed with warm, vibrant colors. For the first time, she didn't paint pain, she painted hope. And in the silence of her studio, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace without permission. A few weeks later, Emma received an invitation that made her pause mid-step. It was from the city's art council. She'd been nominated for the Healing Through Art Award. Her students, the same people who once doubted themselves, had sent in letters describing how she'd changed their lives. On the night of the ceremony, Emma stood backstage, her hands trembling slightly. As the lights from the auditorium glowed through the curtains, she could hear her name being announced, applause echoing through the hall. As she walked onto the stage, memories flashed through her mind: the betrayal, the loneliness, the quiet night spent crying on the studio floor. Now, those memories didn't sting. They had shaped her. The host handed her the microphone. Emma Reed, he said, for your incredible contribution to art and emotional recovery. The room stood in applause. Emma took a deep breath. I used to believe, she began, that love was something someone else gave you. But what I've learned is that love is something you build stroke by stroke, moment by moment, until one day you realize it's been growing inside you all along. The audience was silent, captivated. She continued, pain doesn't destroy you. It carves out space for something better. When she stepped off the stage, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Sarah, her old neighbor, the one who used to pity her. Their eyes met, and instead of pity, Emma saw admiration. Sarah mouthed, I'm proud of you. Outside the theater, Emma walked through the soft glow of streetlights, her award clutched loosely in her hand. The city hummed with life, but for once, she didn't feel small within it. A reporter caught up to her and asked, What's next for you, Emma? She smiled. I think I'm just going to keep painting until the walls in this world are a little brighter. That night, back home, she placed the award on a shelf, not in her studio, but in her living room. She didn't need to hide her accomplishments anymore. Sitting by the window, she looked at the stars, feeling not victorious but whole. She whispered to herself, I made it through. Then, with a soft smile, she added, and it was worth every tear. The following morning, Emma woke to the faint hum of her coffee machine, the award from the previous night gleaming in the soft sunlight. But her peace was fragile. Across the street, she noticed movement in the house next door. The one her husband had supposedly gone on a work trip to. Curiosity prickled at her chest, mingling uneasily with the memory of the betrayal she'd endured. As she sipped her coffee, she saw a familiar figure unloading boxes, her husband, smiling casually, completely unaware of her gaze. Her heart clenched, not with anger this time, but with clarity. The man who had lied, who had fractured her world, was back. And yet she felt no desperation, no need to chase him or demand explanations. Instead, Emma felt something she hadn't in years, control over her own story. She pulled her sketchbook close and began to draw, letting each stroke carry the tension, the disbelief, and eventually the resolve. Later that afternoon, a neighbor came by, cheerful and unknowing, and asked if Emma was planning to attend the block's casual evening gathering. For a moment, Emma hesitated, then laughed softly. She would go, but this time on her terms, with her boundaries clear, her heart intact. As twilight descended, she noticed her husband peeking from behind the curtains, uncertain and hesitant. Emma didn't wave, didn't scowl. She simply continued painting at her window, letting the light from her canvas outshine the shadows across the street. She realized that the power to reclaim her life wasn't about confrontation, it was about choosing where she placed her energy, her love, her attention. Tonight, the world felt wider, and for the first time in years, entirely hers. Weeks passed, and Emma's life settled into a rhythm she had never dared to imagine. Her art flourished, the local gallery requesting more of her work, and students continued to send messages of gratitude and inspiration. One evening, as she prepared for a small exhibition at her favorite cafe, she glanced across the street. Her husband's house stood silent, shadows moving inside. But she felt no curiosity, no lingering hurt. She had learned that freedom didn't come from someone leaving. It came from reclaiming her own heart. The exhibition night arrived, warm and buzzing with laughter, the smell of coffee and paint mingling. Emma watched as people admired her work, some tearing up at the raw emotion captured in each stroke. She realized that love, patience, and forgiveness weren't things to give to others first, they were things she cultivated within herself. Standing under the soft lights, she whispered, "I am whole," that night. Returning home, she placed her award back on the shelf, next to her newest painting. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to look over her shoulder, didn't feel the echo of past betrayals. Instead, she felt steady, radiant, untouchable in her peace. Emma smiled, a soft, lasting smile, knowing that the story she had once feared was broken had transformed into one of resilience, art, and self-love. And as she looked out the window at the city lights, she whispered again, "This is just the beginning." If you enjoyed Emma's journey, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Comment below your favorite part of the story and what you would do in Emma's place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that will move your heart and spark your imagination.